Welcome to the Forge, my wanton wildlings. I'm your creepsmith, and I hope you like my work.
Everyone loves their personal space. Not just for security or safety, but for the idea that we're cognizant of and in control of what goes on around us. Once that's violated, it takes forever to feel it again. Of course, if you add a truly unearthly and real opponent dead set on, well, that's another fear, isn't it? What do they want? We'll try and figure that out tonight in our little lump of levity, There's a Man Behind You by SmileyJack. My name is Robert Crandall, and I play a marginal part in the following story. I'm attempting to post on this site for scary stories on behalf of the author, my friend, Jonathan Talley. John is currently serving a prison sentence for manslaughter. I hope that seeing this published in a public forum will help ease his mind. His mental state has deteriorated considerably, as you'll see. I'm not a superstitious person, so I have no trouble seeing it as the hallucinations of a mentally disturbed individual. If you are superstitious, I recommend not listening to this. So here it is, reproduced word for word from John's letter that he wrote while in solitary confinement. He's pleaded repeatedly, almost desperately, to post it on some internet site where it will be read or listened to. As of the last week, he's been threatening to kill himself if he is not able to see it published on the web. For the record, I did not do what John accuses me of at the beginning of the story. To John, you will see this soon, and I hope it brings you some measure of relief. I should tell you now, dear reader, I'm writing this story from prison, solitary confinement. I've been in solitary for a few days now, and it's for the best. I hope that this reaches as many people as possible. These are the events that happened to me leading up to the murder and my incarceration. Whether you believe me or not is your business, but it's the truth. This is New York City. I'm getting back home late at night after a fine evening of friends and drinking. It starts to rain really heavy, but luckily I just made it to the subway station, so I go down into the subway. I get into the car, and it's empty. But one stop later, one person gets on and sits in the middle of my car, on my side. Young guy, early 20s. He's sitting with a strangely straight posture, staring at nothing. His head's slightly tilted. It's got this wild look in his hair and eyes like he hasn't slept a long time. I put my earbuds in and listen to the music on my phone. Led Zeppelin. Nice. 2 or 3 stops later, I happen to glance up and notice, strangely, that the distance between this guy and myself seems to have lessened. He's still sitting the same way, back completely straight, head tilted, eyes wide, staring at nothing. This is weird, but maybe I misjudged the distance from before? I turn back to my phone. 1 stop later, I look up, and he's 3 seats away from me. Okay, now it's getting creepy. I know this guy is getting closer to me for some reason. What the hell, I say. Look, dude, there's plenty of seats on the train. I don't want any trouble. He turns to look at me, briefly, and there's this wildness in his eyes, but then he turns back, facing straight forward. I'm watching this guy closely now. Suddenly, I notice that his clothes are completely dry. See, he got on 3 stops after me, after it had started raining, and yet he had no umbrella, but was completely dry. I could only conclude that he hadn't come from street level. He'd been down in the subway tunnels the whole time. At first, I'm thinking, he might be homeless, but his jacket looks too new. He ain't dirty. Oh well. It's New York. Sometimes there's weirdos on the train. He's kinda thin and pale, and I'm confident I could take him in a fight, but man, I don't want this shit tonight. I'm still a little dizzy from the booze. Suddenly, I hear a loud gasp. The guy turns, stares at me with a horrified look on his face. "What?" I shout. Part of me is getting pissed off at this asshole, yet I feel a shiver run down my spine. His face is locked in this tableau of fear, like the exact instant when something terrifying surprises you. This guy isn't acting. He's afraid. Seconds go by, feeling like hours. The guy's face is completely frozen in fear, and by now I'm sure he's got some kind of mental issue. And then he whispers something hurriedly. "Hes Behind You." "What?" I say again. "Hes Behind You. Hes Behind You. Hes Behind You." His whispering is fast and insistent, but I still can't make out what he's saying. "Speak slower." He gets slightly closer to me and leans in, still looking afraid. "Hes Behind You. This man behind you. There's a man behind you." "Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you?" I'm shouting now. He grabs me by the shoulders and my body shakes from an adrenaline rush. "There is a man behind you." The guy whispers in my ear and then lets go, leaning back. His face is still wild, but now it's different. It's like he's no longer scared for himself. Now he's scared for me. I can't help it. This incident is so weird, so fucking creepy. I turn and I look over my shoulder. Of course, there's nothing there. And then I turn back, seeing nothing. The guy's gone. Completely. There's no one in the subway car but me. I am utterly alone. Somehow, in the time it took for me to look back, the guy must have run into the next car. I hurry over there and I look, but all I see are two elderly ladies who give me a weird look. Shivering, I just sit back down. Now, my dear listener, I am a logical man. I'm not religious. I really need to see something to believe it. I don't believe in the supernatural. In fact, I'm sure most supernatural incidents have a perfectly logical explanation based in reality, even if they haven't been discovered yet. The problem is that people want to believe, and so they do. There's only one logical explanation for the vanishing wild-eyed guy. Somebody spiked my drink. It was a hallucination. It had to be. As soon as I get out of the subway and back above ground, I call my friend Rob on the phone. He was at the bar with me, and he's been known to be a joker. I wouldn't have put it past him to slip me something. "Dude, Rob, what the fuck?" I said as he answers. Rob pretends like he has no idea what's going on. "Did you give me some acid shit? I was fucking hallucinating all the way back home. John, I really have no idea what you're talking about, I swear." Finally, I consider the possibility that maybe he's telling the truth. There were other people at that bar tonight. "Fine, man, but if I find out you're fucking with me, I am gonna kill you." And I hung up. I called everyone I knew who had been at the bar that evening. Finally, I called Dave. Of course, same old deny. "Are you sure?" "Dude, I trust you, but I don't trust everyone else. What about what's her name? Jesse's girlfriend. She was there by herself, which was weird. Maybe they just broke up and she was looking to date rape some guy like me by slipping LSD in their drink?" No luck. No one poisoned my drink, and there was no reason to suspect anyone did. Yet what explanation was there for a disappearing crazy guy? Next few days, I didn't even think anything of it. Life slowly got back to normal. I didn't really think of that creepy incident on the train. I hung out with friends, went to work, went to the gym, drank at some bars. I was even able to take the subway without remembering what happened just a few days prior. And then the weird stuff started happening. Just a light brush against my body here, a soft whisper there, an occasional breath. It felt like there was someone behind me. But whenever I turned to look, there was no one. Each time it happened, I was reminded of the subway man's declaration. There's a man behind you. A few days later, I'm walking home after buying some cigarettes. I not only feel a breath, but I hear it directly behind me, like someone's face is only a few inches away from the back of my neck. My arms jerk backward, expecting to push away some horrible creeper, but only thin air. I whirl around and face an empty street. Terrified, I run straight home and get right into bed. I'm too scared to think about showering, brushing my teeth, nothing. Thankfully, the feeling is gone. I'm lying face up, and the mattress feels soft and safe against my back. I don't dare turn on my side or on my front for the fear that this man will come back, hovering over me like some ghastly evil apparition that you always see in these horror movies. For a few weeks after that, nothing happened. I started to feel better. Annoyingly, I became the butt of some jokes, people thinking that I'm doing acid again. I keep telling people I don't do that shit anymore. I took the stuff years ago, but only a couple times. And there's no way it's a fucking flashback. People ask me that so many times it pisses me off. No one came forward saying they drugged my drink, so I assume it was some desperate, lonely girl at the bar, hoping that I'd become woozy and she'd be able to swoop in and save me. But then, I begin getting this weird feeling that someone was watching me, behind me, just staring at me. A man behind me. I'd be walking down the street and swear that the man was following me, only to turn back and see nothing. The worst of these incidents was in a restaurant with my date. Her name was Julie. Immediately after sitting down, I get that feeling again. I sense him sitting at the table behind me, and I feel his eyes burning holes in the back of my head. The man is here in the restaurant, watching me with that cold, obsessive stare, that terrifying expression, half grin, half snarl. He has bloodshot eyes, wide open and staring, and crazy, untamed white hair. He's wearing a disheveled vintage wool coat. Don't ask me how I know any of this. For some reason, I just do. Julie starts complaining about how I keep turning around, and she wonders aloud why she isn't entertaining enough to keep my attention. Finally, I whisper to her, "There's someone watching me. Some man behind me that's staring at me. Do you see him?" And she frowns at me, looks over my shoulder, behind me, looks directly into what I'm sure is this guy's face. That horrible face. I nearly expect her to scream out in terror. Instead, I don't see anything. She looks at me strangely. She thinks I'm crazy, and maybe I am. But I know that man is there. After that night, Julie never called me or sent me another message. Bitch. Up to this point, I had thankfully never encountered the man inside my apartment. It had always been on the street or in some public place. I began to avoid leaving my apartment at all, and this gave me some small measure of respite. I took off work and went for days without leaving my apartment. And those blissful days, I never felt the man's presence. I began telling everyone that I was sick as an excuse to stay in the apartment. If people asked to stop by, I obliged, but I pretended that I had a cough and a runny nose. Dear Rita, everyone has a weakness. Some trait that becomes his or her undoing. That one thing that friends and foes alike know how to use to their advantage. For me, this weakness is women. Specifically, beautiful women. Hot chicks. I am smitten. Always. I'm not terribly ugly. I have good hygiene, I have a decent paying job, and I try not to be an asshole. So I've done relatively well in the dating game. But I am currently single, and most of my friends know this. So my friend Jim sends me a text and a picture. Asshole, I am not gonna forgive you for this. The text reads, "Dude, this hot girl wants to meet you." The picture, sure enough, is a smoking hot Italian chick, college age, my absolute fave. I text back, "She wants to meet me or she wants to fuck me?" Smiley face. "Keep it in your pants, dude." She said meet. Maybe more. I don't know. Send her your picture and she seemed really into you. Okay, sounds good. Where do I meet her? Come to my party. You're both invited, 7 p.m., my place. Tongue sticking out emoji. As it turns out, there is no fucking girl. Jimmy took the pic from some dating site and baited me into coming to his lame-ass house party in Queens. He tells me everybody's been asking why I've been so antisocial lately, but I'm too pissed off to care. I just want to go home. And as I turn to leave, that's when I feel it. It hits me like a brick, oh so familiar and still so terrifying. The man's there. He's behind me. Somewhere. Staring at me. I turn and I see him. Or rather, I half saw him for an instant before somebody passed in front of him. And by the time the person gets out of the way, he was gone. But I swear, I saw him and I knew him instantly, even though I'd never actually seen him before. Crazy white hair, a head that was slightly too large, bloodshot red eyes, wide and insane, and that grin, an expression. You could either call it a grin or a snarl or a growl. It was impossible to tell. He was of average height, probably same height as me. Jimmy has been insisting for several minutes that I tell him about my problems, completely oblivious to the horror on my face. Finally, I say to him, "Fine, Jim. The reason is I've been avoiding someone. And he's here at your party." Jimmy gives me this weird look and starts looking around, confused. "Dude, you know everyone here. I know everyone here. Who are you talking about?" A man. Don't know his name. Crazy, white-haired man that just stares at me with this horrible grin on his face. I think he's stalking me. Jim laughs. Is it like some gay guy or something? This pisses me off. No, Jimmy, it's not some gay guy. I wouldn't care if it were some gay guy. In fact, I'd love it if it were some gay guy. No, this guy is like some psycho serial killer, man. He just looks at me like he's hunting me, like he knows I can't get away, and all I have to do is leave the house, and he'll find me. "Okay," Jimmy says, humoring me. "Let's go find this psycho killer, and at the very least kick him the fuck out of my party." He leads the way, room by room, noting every person we pass. I don't feel the man anywhere, but I'm sure that he's in this house, somewhere. All of a sudden, I get that same overwhelming sense of dread. He's behind me. I'm sure of it. I turn around, and I see a door closing. "Dude, what's in there?" I whisper, pointing at the door. "It's a fucking closet, John," Jimmy answers. He's in there. I'm sure of it. I look at Jimmy, and he can tell that I'm not messing with him. I'm genuinely terrified, and it's making him uneasy. He asks the people in the room if they saw anybody go into the closet, and everyone answers either no or they were looking somewhere else. Jimmy slowly creeps up to the door. As he gets closer, the rest of the party around me seems to fall away, as if there's nothing but me and Jimmy and the door. And the man. Jimmy gets within 5 steps, and I can't help it. I freak out. I know the guy's behind the door and that he's coming for me. He seems almost gleeful, like he's been toying with me this whole time. But now he's ready to come for me, for real. I turn and run as fast as I can out of the house. I vaguely hear Jimmy screaming at me that there's no one there, I'm an asshole, the closet is empty, but it doesn't matter. I know that man was there. I know he's coming for me. My lungs are nearly bursting as I reach the subway entrance. I hop over the entrance rail and just barely make it to the train as the doors close a second behind me. I turn back to the doors, exhausted. The man has stopped. He's above the steps at the subway entrance, standing just out of sight, but he knows. And more importantly, I know that I've escaped. For now, at least. I sigh, letting the fear drain from my body. There was only one person on the train with me. Big burly guy, dark brown beard, middle 30s. Probably been to the gym every day since he was 15. Just on a whim, I walk up to him and said, "Dude, there's a man behind you." He looks at me and his face scrunches up. For a second, I felt like I was going to get punched. Then he bellowed, "Fuck off, you crazy bastard." I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Yeah, it sounded crazy. Sounded stupid. I threw my hands up defensively. "Sorry, man. I'm just drunk. Don't beat me up, please." I didn't have a drop of liquor in me. Hadn't had a single drink since that other night on the train with the other guy, the night this whole fucking nightmare started. When I get out of the train, this gust of cold wind blows past me as the door to the train closes. My brain screams in terror. The man is here. Somehow he's here, and we both know I'm alone. I bolt up the stairs and into the night. I don't dare look behind me for fear of what I'm going to see, but I know what's happening. This man has given me a slight head start, but now he's running. He is sprinting down the street at an unnaturally fast pace. He's going to catch me. I can feel it. I have my keys in my hand as I make it to my apartment building and jam the key into the lock. I sneak a glance back. The street's dark, but I can see this hazy outline of his shape as he runs toward me. His white hair flapping up and down with each step. I finally get the door open, hurry in, and slam the door behind me. Relief washes over me so quick that I almost black out. My heart's pumping a mile a minute, and I'm gasping like a madman, but I can't help but laugh. I feel safe. Looking out the window, I see him. Or, I don't see him, but I know that he's there. He's standing in the darkness just slightly beyond the range of the nearest street lamp. If I focus real hard, I can barely see the outline of his white hair. After this incident, I stopped pretending to be sick. I didn't go out, and when people asked me why, I didn't give them a reason. I took some phone calls, but I didn't let people into my apartment, ever, even if they visited and knocked on my door. Other people came and went, so I couldn't prevent the man from getting into the building, but I sure as hell wasn't about to let anybody into my apartment. If my friends insisted that I open it up, I just got angry with them until they left. Slowly but surely, the inevitable happened. I made it through everything in my fridge. All the canned goods I had stocked up. Then everything in the freezer. Last day before my hell really started, I had nothing but a bottle of whiskey. Whiskey's made from grain, right? It's like eating a loaf of bread. I downed half of it. It didn't help. I was still hungry as hell. I can't help it. I cave. I order takeout. After about half an hour, the Chinese delivery guy arrives, and I press the button to let him in the door. Less than a minute, I hear his footsteps. My stomach is grumbling in anticipation of actually getting some real food. As my doorbell rings, I stare out the peephole. It's an Asian kid, either late high school or early college, can't really tell. As I open the door, he gets a look at me and gives a start. Suddenly, I become self-conscious. I probably look a mess, haven't really been taking care of myself. $10.30, he says. I get a 10 and a 5 and thrust it into his hand and snatch my food. Thanks, I don't need to change, I say, eager to just close the door. Thanks, mister, the kid says, smiling, and I back briefly into the apartment and close the door. But then, just before it closes completely, I notice it. His smile, his grin, his growl. The man. He's the man. I stare out the peephole, and my breath catches in my throat. There's no one there. I look down, stare at my open hands. There is no food. Suddenly, my apartment is chilly. The man isn't here, but something feels terribly wrong, like a protective barrier is broken now, and now I'm sure I'm at the mercy of this man. Like the lighting has changed. The sunset colors outside my window seem more pale and foreboding than usual. Cold and hungry, I lock both the locks on my front door and hurry into my bedroom. Under my covers, I sigh as a feeling of safety returns. And then I try to reassure myself. Even the young delivery guy was the horrible man. He's still outside. My sleep that evening is dreamless, but I still wake up with a start, drenched in cold sweat. It is now completely dark outside. I look at my clock. It's 4:17 a.m. And my bladder is completely full, like a tight water balloon that could burst at any moment. When I can't stand it any longer, I leap out of the covers and hurry into the bathroom. I start peeing, and it is the most glorious piss I've ever had in my life. I stand there for nearly a minute, and even after I finish, I'm still sighing with relief. Finally, I wash my hands, deciding I'm just going to go back to bed. Screw the fact that I haven't eaten anything that day. I'm feeling slightly nauseous, and I realize it's because I'm hungover from the whiskey. As I leave the bathroom, I notice that there's a weird light in my apartment, and that's when I see it. My front door is fucking wide open. With a strangled yell, I rush over to it and slam it with a ferocity that surprises even me. It's no use. He's here. That man is here. And he's behind me. I turn on the light, but he's nowhere. He's behind me. No matter where I turn, he's always behind me. Finally, I catch my reflection in a mirror. I stare at myself, and I can see the wild terror in my eyes, my chest heaving as my breath rushes in and out. But I see behind me, and he's not there. Not there. For a moment, my mind can't resolve this conflict. I flip-flop between this overwhelming mental sensation that the man is behind me and the visual proof in the mirror that he isn't. First, the mirror is the truth, then it's a lie. Then it's the truth, then it's a lie. This conflict is strangely comforting. I go right up to the mirror and look past my reflection into the room behind me. He's not anywhere in the room, and yet I know in my mind that he's there. The man exists. If I can just make it to my bed, I know I'll be safe. I dash away from the mirror and into my bedroom, and I crawl under the covers. The relief I feel is short-lived. Even lying on my back, I know he's there. He's buried under the mattress, just underneath me, and I feel his arms coiling around my rib cage. Even though my head is against the pillow, I can feel his breath against the back of my neck. I scream, and I jump out of my bed and into the corner of the room. The man stays buried in my mattress. And suddenly he sits up, staring at me with those same intense, angry eyes, and his mouth is locked in a grinning growl. I can't look up. I'm too scared, but I know what he looks like, and I know what he's doing. He cocks his head slightly, and he whispers at me, "No escape." Dear reader, you may have felt fear before, but you don't know fear the way I knew it in that instant. To have that man staring at you, and you know you can't escape. Frozen in fear, I sat like that, literally feeling like that for hours, but it might as well have been days. The man never moved, never said anything else, just sat there half buried in my bed, head cocked, and bloodshot, angry eyes staring at me. There I sat in the corner, my head down, completely paralyzed, cold sweat dripping from my forehead. The sun came up. Something weird about him, though, like the light was different for him than it was for everything else in the room, as if the sunlight wasn't quite reflecting off him properly. Feeling overwhelming fear for so long, other thoughts finally started to creep through my mind. He's feeding off of my fear, yet he hasn't really done anything. He's looked at me creepily, he's chased me down, but he hasn't actually done anything to me physically. Somehow, I found the courage to stand up and rush out of the room. As I do, I feel him behind me again. Every step I take, he takes one too. Perfect lockstep. Always close enough that he could wrap his arms around me if he wanted. I figure if I can just get my mind off him, maybe I can just ease this feeling that he's behind me. My phone is nearly dead, but not quite. Grabbing the earbuds, I thrust them in my ears and turn the sound up as high as it can go. And I play a song, anything, just to take my mind off the man behind me. Nothing But a Good Time by Poison starts blaring in my eardrums. By the time the lyrics start, it's starting to take the edge off my fear. Now listen, not a dime, can't pay my rent, I can barely make it through the week. By the time the chorus starts, I'm thinking this might work. I might actually be able to take my mind off the fear. I start to become delusional that I might be able to break this man's hold on me with the power of rock and roll. Don't need nothing but a good time. How can I resist? Ain't looking for nothing but a good time. And it don't get better than this. And right as that line ends, my arm twists violently behind me, and I can feel his clammy, dead hands on my wrist and cold breath on my neck. "You think you can shut me out?" comes a cold reptilian voice. I scream as I feel the skin on my back splitting open. I whirl around, seeing a bloodied butcher knife on the table. To this day, dear reader, I try to argue that the slash on my back could not possibly be self-inflicted due to its angle, but Physicians note that my arm was twisted as well, allowing for the possibility that I indeed slashed my own back myself. They don't believe me, dear reader, that the arm twist and the slash on my back were both inflicted by a man they can't find. Still feeling the man directly behind me, I grab the bloody knife and whirl around, expecting the knife to cut through the man's face. Instead, I find air, of course. Still holding the knife, I dash out of my apartment, not bothering to lock the door. I fly down the stairs and out the building. The man is still right on my tail. I run out into the street, but he's right behind me. Every time I turn, he rotates with me like some horrifying cartoon character that you can't shake. I turn around fast, but he's faster, and still behind me. I turn again, but there he is, still behind me. I turn one more time, and I stab downward. One of these times, I have to catch him. And my knife sinks 6 or 7 inches into an elderly lady's eyeball. So that's the story. I committed manslaughter. To this day, that isn't the part I regret most. I regret that my fear of this man, whether or not he's a hallucination, caused the unintended death of another person. I am sorry beyond what any words can express. Don't look now. Don't move. And I would like to once again convey my condolences to Miss Carpenter's husband and her son and her son's family. She did not deserve this, and if I could go back in time, there is a man behind you right now. I would turn the knife on myself instead of her. If it had been my death instead of theirs, would have been better for all parties. Now, dear reader, here I make an apology. Did you look? Or even if you didn't, did you want to? Any slight doubt? Any pang of anxiety? If so, then, like the young guy at the beginning of this story, I've probably disappeared from my cell. I'm sorry for what you will go through, but please believe me when I say I just desperately need relief from the man behind me, even if it means passing him on to a stranger such as yourself. Remember that it starts with a brush here, a whisper there, a slight sound, a footstep, a passing breath, a rustling you can't explain, a sudden prickle in your back. My only advice: don't ignore him. It only makes it worse. Good luck. And that, wildlings, is one of the reasons why I'm not all that fond of human beings. Our fears do something to us that makes us near as monstrous as the things that scare us. When we can't face a fear or fight it, deny it its fuel or overpower it, what do? We pass it on. We let it grow. We spread the virus. Stay scary, my wildlings. Watch your drinks. And make the most of your nights.